Welcome back to Biblio Fitness. Hope everyone's had a great day and made some spectacular gains. Now, before we go on, very interesting video, very interesting topic today. I just hope my vanity become satiated in a way that I will never be able to realize. And is that when you guys watch this video, whether it be chronologically or so forth, you see a transformation in the physiognomy, because I do. I notice it. I'm like, damn, I didn't fill out these shirts when I like this, which is a good thing, right? It's all about making gains. But enough mental. Let's go on with today's topic, which is section 448, titled "Honoring Reality." Now, this one's a mind doozy. This one really got my head spinning for this past weekend, so I'm pretty excited to talk about this today. So I'm going to go ahead and read it. Quote, "How can we look at this exulting multitude without tears and acquiescence? At one time, we thought little of the object of their exultation, and we should still think so if we ourselves had not come through a similar experience. And what may these experiences lead us to? What are our opinions? In order that we may not lose ourselves and our reason, we must fly from experiences. It was thus that Plato fled from actuality and wished to contemplate things only in their pale mental concepts. He was full of sensitiveness and knew how easily the waves of this sensitiveness will drown his reason. Must the sage therefore say, 'I will honor reality, but I will at the same time turn my back to it because I know and dread it? Ought he to behave as certain African tribes do in the presence of their sovereign, whom they approach backwards, thus showing the reverence at the same time as their dread?'" End quote. I freaking love this one. Because it goes into the whole theme of this book, especially this past few pages was basically the last book of this chapter, I guess, the last chapter. And one thing that I realized, the major thing, is all these endeavors are one day futile. I mean, not one day, they are futile, right? We honor reality, and I'm talking about the endeavors of philosophy, the endeavors of science, the endeavors of religion, really trying to conceptualize and bring this chaotic world down to and break it down and compartmentalize it in a way that we can understand it, in a way that allows us to place ourselves in this false sense of control over our surroundings and over our environment. I don't need this over our environment, right? Why you turn to religions and philosophies, and once you start really breaking it down as to what is being sought, you can figure out what is being run away from. What are we rejecting? What are we hating against the world? And even when he makes the example of Plato, how he was looking, especially during the times of Athens and right at the end of the Peloponnesian War with the tyrants of the 100 and all this other stuff, the topic of democracy, the murdering, the butchering, and the revolutions, and the mob rule that was expressing itself in a very extreme, violent way, was of course going to skew a man such as Plato, a man whose political career was already was forfeit because one of his uncles was one of these tyrants placed by Lacedaemon or Sparta, whichever way you want to call them. So his political career from that perspective was forfeit. And when you take that into perspective and the historical relativeness, or the relativeness of history and what was going on in Athens at that time, you begin to realize how it begins to make sense as to why Plato would put out the philosophy that he did. Was looking at the reality of the situation, was looking at his surroundings and being like, how can this be better? And focusing on these, Nietzsche calls them pale mental concepts, these idealizations of what it is to be a man, these idealization of what it means to be a god. You read the Republic, and Socrates even condones censorship. He doesn't condone the fact that, Zeus can be some whoring guy. No, he has to be pristine, unapproachable, It has to be something beyond the comprehension of humanity. It cannot be any semblance of humanity, because there has to be something that we chase. There has to be an ideal that we could place in front of people's head, in front of people's eyes, that will somehow lead us away from who we are, from the behaviors that we actively engage in daily, right? This evolution. And this is the thing that I've always, and in reading that and what I've just elaborated has led me to the conclusion, or maybe realized, that eternal salvation has always been that carrot, right? Has always been that deviation, has always been that carrot placed in front of the people to lead us away from reality into a utopia, an Elysium, a heaven. If you follow our rules, or you do this or that, you will be safe all eternity. You will, and that's always been the case, right? When we look at reality and we want to extricate ourselves from the reality, the rhetoric that everyone always does is that we're doing it for justice and liberty, and we're doing it for the freedoms of others, and we're doing it to bring everybody up, because we got to make our world better, we got to make the world better, we got to make everything better. And it's always the same rhetoric, and it's always, at the end of the day, the same principle, which is eternal salvation. It is the thing that has caused us to commit mass genocide. It is the thing that, allows us to be able to sleep at night when we murder and we cheat and we steal and we loot, because we have God on our side. And what is a better excuse than God to commit egregious acts? Because you are given carte blanche. So I look at the first Crusades with Pope Urban, given a carte blanche that whoever goes on to the Crusades will be absolved of all sins. And obviously I'm probably oversimplifying the entire message of it, but basically, giving a whole bunch of looters and murderers, giving them the right to do whatever they want, because they're doing it for Jesus. And that's always been the case. And I think that in our desperate need to absolve ourselves of suffering and pain, we will always succumb to that rhetoric of eternal salvation, and it will always be used against us. Because, and allow me to be a bit cynical, which, if you're watching this, you should already be used to this by now. But I believe that eternal salvation only works for the poor and the plebeians, because we're the only dumbasses that still think that there is such a thing as salvation, that there is such a thing as redemption, that there is such a thing as, through all this pain and strife and woe, there is nothing after. There is no salvation. There is no Jesus waiting for you. There's no Peter at the gates going through the list and seeing if you're allowed in the party or not. There's none of that. There's no hope. And our pride doesn't allow us to do so. And even in the case of pride, it's a very interesting thing, because, on the one hand, we allow ourselves to be humiliated. We humiliate ourselves to follow the whims and the structures laid out of the world by another human being, and taking it as real, taking it as truth, because we need to escape from reality. While we honor it, we need to run away from it. We need something better, because this pain and suffering has to mean something, and this desperate need to fulfill or to find an answer will always be used against us, and it always has been, and it always will be. Eternal salvation is the carrot and the stick. If you don't follow our whims, if you don't follow these doctrines and disciplines and virtues, you will be cast down into the fiery pits of hell. And even in that sense, the endeavor of seeking salvation is the most selfish of all endeavors. Because you look at something like Christianity or the Abrahamic religions, barring Judaism, because I don't think Judaism has hell. It's a very vengeful way to look at the world, right? All these rich, tyrannical people have been humiliating me and using me all my life. But watch, when at the end of the day, I will get the last laugh. And while I suffered for a lifetime, you're suffering for an eternity. Because fuck you and everybody that stays in your house. That's really what it is. when you look at these sort of religions that provide you an escape from pain and an escape from the finality of death. That's always been the ultimate pride, to get us moving, to get us to perform the actions and the violent means, or the violent, and yeah, it's just the violent expressions of another is eternal salvation. We're doing it for the betterment of people. We're going to progress forward. We're going to make life better. It's always that way. When we look at all these religions, that's all it all always is. It's a promise of salvation and a promise of an escape from reality, a way to justify that your surroundings and the way that people treat you and the way that you've been treated and the way that everything has turned out is just one giant error. It's not your fault. It's reality's fault. But reality is built on error. So, this is all very interesting ways to look at it, because and it goes back into another section that Nietzsche made, is that just because you see the trappings doesn't mean you have escaped from it. And that's with us all the time, is even when we know what the facade means, when we seek religion, when we seek philosophy, when we seek all these manners, is to find order in a void, really. It's just wanting to escape from it, wanting to have control, and finding concepts that are far more suitable, even though reality isn't going anywhere. Nothing has changed. Your perspective has changed, but the underlying condition has remained the same. And it just harkens back to one of the previous videos I made about horticulture, right? How we use these endeavors to create optical illusions over the underlying reality of the whole thing. Because at the end of the day, if you look beyond the pale, what people want to say, people want to say, or people want to imagine as how the world has changed and where the world is going, nothing much has changed. Us humans have not changed our behaviors. We still act the same way. We just know how to bullshit way better now. We can't be outwardly violent as we used to be, but those desires have not gone anywhere. We just have found different avenues to find them, or find different avenues to satiate those violent, selfish desires. Nothing ever changes, even about us, even about the reality of human beings. When we seek religions like these, they're supposed to be for the poor and the desperate. It's the ultimate vengeance fetish, right? And when heaven comes down, everyone will be cast down into the fiery pits of hell and burn for all eternity. Like, does that sound like a very forgiving people? Does that sound like a people who are turning the other cheek or who are understanding? No, it sounds like people who are only accepting religion because one day they know that the guy who's been whipping their ass is going to get their just due, right? Nothing changes even about us when we seek religion, when we seek God. There's a selfishness, there's a narcissism within us that finds holiness, that finds its halo in religion, right? Nothing ever changes about us, and nothing ever really has. Not nothing has. I'm obviously overgeneralizing, but for the most part, it's always been that case. Even in the sense of altruism, it's a very selfish endeavor. Everything is selfish. But we just have become extremely adept at finding the appropriate words or vocabulary to throw at ourselves in the mirror so we could sleep at night and call ourselves good people. I love this book. He's ended it out with a banger. So that'll be it for today's section. It's a very interesting one. It's a very mind-wrecking one, as always. What has changed. So, thank you all for watching. Thank you all for listening. I do hope you all have a great day and make beautiful games. And until next time, guys.